Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Alright guys, mind control facility or escape? Do we escape or do we go through the mind control facility? I'm partial to the bucket of my escaping, but I will take suggestions if you guys really want to go to the mind control. No, Nemi wants to go through escape. Okay, we're escaping.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death. But of course, Stanley and the bucket thought better of it and realized they simply had too much to live for.
Death and destruction.
Nope. It's death for Stanley and the bucket.
Death and destruction.
The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Time to go. You guys ready for a very painful death for us in the bucket? For a second I thought I didn't have my bucket. I was very concerned.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be.
Bucket.
To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end as it was crushed violently to death.
I cannot see. Narrator Chen.
It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
Wait, I don't have my bucket anymore. The bucket? Welcome to the grand exhibit. You are standing at the precipice of knowledge. Much like a bucket itself, the human mind is frequently empty within, a cavernous void. But through use of the exhibit in front of you, the mind becomes full and enriched and substantiated. Knowledge of the bucket and its history is the only true knowledge we really have. Will you take what you learn here out with you into the world? Will you accept with an open mind what may be challenging about the information in this exhibit? Will you change the lives of yourself and your loved ones as a result of this exhibit? Or will you turn a blind eye and continue to live as you were in ignorance and darkness? I didn't know you were ignorant, darkness. Anti-narrator. Mid-rater. It is. It's the midnight narrator.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
25 buckets. A photograph of 25 buckets. The greatest number of buckets ever captured on... This is way more than 25 buckets. Captured on camera. The photographer experienced catatonic shock for several weeks as a result of the euphoria from exposure of this many buckets at once. Did you guys experience catatonic shock, the exposure to the buckets? The Inferno bucket. You guys keep throwing shit at me. Shout out to the VTubers that make abuse cheap. A replica of the Inferno bucket, which in the medieval era was so powerfully alluring that it drove dozens of nations to war with one another for control of it. Billions died, and yet in spite of it all, the simple fact remains: no one can control a bucket. Cave drawing. While we know that buckets predate the existence of mankind, we do not know by how long. This cave drawing depicts early man's discovery of the practical uses of the bucket, by which time the bucket had already likely been around for several millennia. Notice in these drawings how the bucket is allowing itself to be used, having judged humanity to be worthy of its treasure. What fucking created? Are the buckets aliens? Are they dinosaurs? The fuck are the buckets?
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
I agree. The hanging bucket. Ooh. This piece symbolizes the necessary relationship between bucket and humanity. However clear our grasp of the bucket may be, there is yet more than it always is out of reach. There is yet more that is always out of reach. This distance inevitably is for our own good. What did I do?
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong.
Wait, I wanted to read more about the buckets. No, I didn't realize it was going to progress me. I wanted to read more about the buckets.
Let him be crushed by the machine.
No, I wanted to do
Don't reset
more.
the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
I wanted to read more about the bucket.